Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lucky Nagarajan with Geek in America. Welcome to DFI Women in D Foundations Committee and Metro New York City Chapter webinar series. We're really excited to bring this webinar series, Converting Crisis into Opportunity, Different Perspectives, to you all. This webinar series is actually planned twice a month, basically to support and connect the industry during this challenging COVID time. The speakers and panelists are from different backgrounds. They are here to discuss thought-provoking issues. Dr. Barnali Ghosh, he is a technical principal at Mott MacDonald London office. He'll be presenting on why a seismic engineer never stands still. Before I talk about her background, I want to congratulate Dr. Barnali Ghosh to be recognized as the top 50 women in engineering 2020 by Women Engineering Society. Great way to celebrate International Women in Engineering Day, right? A little background now. Dr. Barnali is a chartered civil engineer with specialization in earthquake geotechnical engineering through her PhD at Cambridge University. During her career, she has acted as a seismic designer and reviewer for high-profile projects around the world. Her extensive practical experiences comes from working in various capacities within the industry. She remains connected to the academic world as an external supervisor for PhD student at Cambridge University, formerly honorary lecturer of University College London. She now teaches earthquake courses across Europe, contributing to professional excellence. She is passionate about increasing the representation of women in engineering and has featured in the Financial Times top 30 future industry leaders from the BAME, B-A-M-E community in 2017, and also shortlisted for the British National Diversity Award for Gender in 2017. She's a committee member for ADVANCE, the Network for Inclusion and Diversity and Women in Mott MacDonald, role model and a mentor for women engineers within the company, and panel member for ICE Diversity Committee, which is Southeast. She is currently acting as a lead mentor for business in the community's BAME, Black, Asian, Minority, Ethnicity, and Cross-Organizational Mentoring Circles Program, COMC, for Mott MacDonald. Let's welcome Dr. Barnali Ghosh.
Hi, hello, Lucky. Thanks for such a great introduction. And I'm really thrilled and pleased to be speaking to all of you. I would say it's a great opportunity for me to be able to find this platform. And the main advantage, I have a couple of slides because I'm an engineer. It's always easy. If you use your slides, then I am on track. Now, essentially, it's a very interesting story how Lucky found me. Really, because of this lockdown, the top picture shows me working from home. And I think because I was working from home, I had more time. So when she contacted me in LinkedIn, I responded and we started talking. And then she invited me. So I think what I will try, although I could have made this presentation very technical, but I tried to kind of stick to some of my experiences which I've gathered working in this industry from last 20 years or so. By the way, I'm speaking to you from Cambridge, beautiful city of Cambridge. I live in Cambridge and I came to Cambridge many years ago, 20 years ago, as a PhD student and kind of stayed on because I love this city so well. Now let's just start with, so as I said, presentation just helps me to structure. So I'm really going to talk about a little bit about my background, something about the projects that I've worked in, which I hope you'll find interesting, some of the challenges that you face when you are like these, in many cases, the only women working in large teams, and obviously some of my thoughts on way forward and what I think we can do to help each other. Essentially, what is the motivation? The motivation has always been to help to design a safer, sustainable, resilient world. A lot of the question that I often ask women, what motivated you to become an engineer? And the answer that I get is usually they see a role model or it is someone in their families which inspired them. For me, it was I came from a very small town in India where there were lots of floods. And I could see the devastation that this natural hazard was causing. So for me, the biggest important thing was, are there any engineering solutions that we can apply which would make the suffering of the people a little less? So that was always my motivation for trying to understand hazards, but from an engineering perspective. This picture to me is really sums up my entire motivation and why I feel so strongly about earthquake engineering. This picture was taken from after the New Zealand earthquake, which caused widespread devastation. And this couple, they're looking at this house. Traditionally, a house is considered to be, your life's investment. So they had lived about 30 years in this, and within just 2 seconds of nature's force, their entire life's investment had gone down. And the devastation that you see is something which kind of really motivates you. And I think the main thing that I always say, that we cannot win the war against an earthquake in the sense that it's almost impossible to predict. The technology has moved on a bit, and so we can still say you're expecting an earthquake, but nobody can tell you that this earthquake will occur at this particular time. So my way of dealing with this has always been that we cannot win this war against prediction. So let us see what we can do as good designers. So that I hope gives you a little bit of background on what has motivated me. Obviously, question comes, how did I get here? I think just it's important to understand, as I said, people's background, because then that tells you. I decided to do a 4 years degree course in civil engineering from India. But as I said, my engineering college was where there were very few girls. And so from the very early stage in my career, I understood that as a woman, if you have to move forward, you really need to be much better than the people around you, because in the year that I did my engineering, and this was way back in 1991, we only had, in a class of about 40 students, we only had 2 girls, so that you can work out the maths yourself. So after finishing my civil engineering degree, I did a further specialization, or what's called as a master's in geotechnical earthquake engineering. Obviously, I assume women in deep foundations, everybody would know what geotechnical engineering is. And then following on from this, I was lucky that I got a scholarship, Cambridge Commonwealth Scholarship from Trinity College in Cambridge. By the way, they only give 10 scholarships from about 5,000 students who apply from India. So this was a fully funded scholarship. And so I landed up in Cambridge as a PhD student in 2000. And I completed my PhD in 2003 in earthquake geotechnical engineering. And what the picture that you see of me in the side is a picture of me when I was a PhD student. During my PhD, I looked at what happens to structures, to a nuclear reactor when you have an earthquake. Something very similar to what happened to the Fukushima earthquake. And since then, since after I finished my PhD, I always wanted to put into practice my technical knowledge. And so I decided to join the industry. And so the career path, I'm very proud of the picture that I show you on the left. This is my first project in New Zealand. It's a first offshore platform in New Zealand which was used, and this is operational as well at the moment. So this project took a lot of my time, first 2 years of my time. But the good thing about this was very close to the PhD topic that I was doing. And obviously, I was tested in this project because we had designed it for a certain earthquake. And while the construction was happening, there was an earthquake at the site. So first, I had a very nervous night thinking, oh my God, is this design going to stand? So until the next morning when the message came, when they said that, yes, the structure is still standing and it's operational. So for me, that was a very early indication that if you design something with the right principles, if you understand the basic knowledge of that, then you can do great things with design. That gave me the, so after that, my first company where I worked was Arab. Arab they have office in US as well. And the good thing about Arab was a very, very, it was a company where they looked at your skills. So it did not really matter what your gender was. You looked at your skills, and if you delivered in your skills, you were actually pushed further. So the beginning part of my career started with great mentors who mentored me when I was young, when I was a young engineer. And I quickly made my way through working to a senior engineer's role in Arab. And then maybe in 2012, I decided that I wanted to sort of diversify, take more responsibility. And then I joined Mott MacDonald as a senior principal engineer, which is like a mid-senior level. And then obviously from the last 7 to 8 years, I've been working with Motts and trying to establish the Seismic as a global business. I was promoted to a technical director in 2017, and I work in a group, the Foundation in Geotechnics. Before me, this group of 180 people of geotechnical engineers never had a woman director before. So at 45, I was one of the youngest women directors. So that kind of tells you why it was, when I went into these board meetings and others, it's often that I'm the only woman who is in the group. And I have to make sure that whatever points I raise are heard too, and people listen to whatever I am trying and get my viewpoint. So that's a bit about the background of what I do. Now, I thought it might be a bit interesting to talk a bit about my global experiences and why they are important. Because a seismic engineer, earthquakes can happen anywhere in the world, so you need to travel. And the only way we learn is when something bad happens. When a structure fails in an earthquake, then we know what was wrong. And once you know what was wrong, you can learn from it. So for us, failures are the best pathway of success. So essentially, because of this, I could travel to many parts of the world. I've vastly traveled, and of course, when you're traveling, you also add in a bit of tourist. If you like a bit of tourism, obviously you can go to different places of the world. One of the interesting things why I think Mott MacDonald makes such an interesting challenge for me, because we work across different sectors. So essentially, we work across buildings, communications, power, and in all of these different sectors, we need what is called as the seismic. There is a bridge that needs to be designed. So essentially, I get to work across each and every sector, which is very interesting for me. Now, this map kind of shows you, this is called as the global seismic hazard map. So all the bits which are red here are exactly countries where we have a lot of seismic hazard or risk. And if you see my dots, so the red dots essentially show the countries which I have visited or where I have worked. The black dots kind of show you the countries where I have worked, but I have not really visited those countries. So you can see, just trying to do this, I looked at this as a sort of a fun way to see in an evening how many countries I worked in. And I found that, okay, there's a lot of countries which I have worked in, which was good fun. Now, one of the examples of this, what happens, I want to share a story with you. This is an example of what happened in Nepal after the earthquake. The Nepal earthquake occurred on 25th of April 2020. It was a Saturday, so the damage or devastation due to school children was less because a lot of children were at home. It was a huge magnitude earthquake, 7.8 magnitude earthquake. And this earthquake killed about 9,000 people. But actually, it had a large financial implication was huge. And there was a US 7 billion estimated losses. and it destroyed many centuries. So the UK government set up a mission, what we call as the EFIT mission. Now, these EFIT missions are basically earthquake fact-finding missions. So the aims of this mission is to go and look at what is okay, what is not okay. In the US, this is done by ERI. They do the similar type of mission and gather investigation. So I was I was a co-leader for this mission, and I was invited by the UK government to go to Nepal and collect this data. And we were going there just after a week of the earthquake. So this occurred we were there in early May, and where a lot of the damage was still happening, was still evident at that time. What happened then? Well, this is where I was heading. If you can imagine, it's like this. The area is like this. This is where I was heading. It's got lots of risks of debris all around, things falling, things are not in the right position, so they can all fall on top of your head. So you have to be careful about everything. That's fine. We are engineers. We know about risk assessment. So whenever we do a visit like this, we always do a detailed risk assessment, which is what I did. We had everything. I knew everything, where everything was. But you can never ever prepare, because what followed on was something that happened, which I came back after I came back from Nepal. I had to give a talk. I had to talk about to my health and safety guys to tell about what happened. And the title of that was Aftershocks and Surprises. Although the main earthquake had occurred, but there were many aftershocks. So I was in the site looking at one of the school buildings when there was an aftershock. And in that aftershock, there was a local lady who was pregnant at that time. She just was next to me, trying to hold her. I managed to dislocate my elbow. And this happened in Nepal, where I was by myself with a team. And obviously, the only nearest hospital was in Kathmandu, and we were in Pokhran, which is like the epicenter of the earthquake. So anyway, these things happen. It's just the story. To me, I felt that the story just became a bit more exciting. So I went to the local hospital. They had a look at it. They said, okay, you have dislocated your elbow. So they took an x-ray, and you will not believe it, because there were so many people who were injured that time, that people just, the kind of aftercare was they just moved my elbow and said, okay, it's fine now. And that's the kind of treatment I got. And then they plastered my hand. But I did not leave the mission. After that also, I continued my mission and completed the rest of the mission with just one hand. And when I came back to UK, I told them what happened. And obviously there were a lot of, the most important thing that happened was they gave me a bionic arm, and obviously some sessions with physiotherapists. But as I said, in this global visits, you have to be ready for the unexpected. And there were some sessions, but I did not really miss a single day of work. I could continue going to work. Unfortunately, it was my left hand, so did not really stop me. But obviously, there was a lesson learned here. The lesson learned was that because I had learned and done my risk assessment, I knew where the nearest hospital was. And once this happened, I could actually although we think that these things will not happen, but once it happened, I could take a risk of that. There are some other locations, remote locations, which I have visited. One of them, which is Pakistan. Now, Pakistan is really, because of my background, India and Pakistan, there is always a tension between those two countries. So when the moment I entered in Pakistan, I was asked this question repeatedly, are you from India? And my security guys had told me from London, you're not going to say you are from India, you have to just say I'm from London. So I am a seismic engineer, and you're trying to build a dam in Pakistan, and I'm here as the seismic specialist. And that's what I did. So the kind of remote locations that I've been, sometimes even I have to look at Google to find where these places are. So essentially, what I want to kind of say in this traveling, in the global experience, I found that things can go wrong when you are in dangerous sites, and there is no substitute for proper planning. And obviously, technology is really helpful. I have different apps in my phone which kind of send message to my family, to my office where I am, so that they can keep a track of it. And obviously, essential medical supplies are necessary. And I think we have a lot of training. What should you do as a female traveler? Because general common sense is applicable. I have found it in all my travels. You will certainly find someone who is very friendly and wants to help you with everything. So you have to be in control everywhere on the site. So you can see me in sites. One of them was in Istanbul and all over pretty much all over the world. But to come back to that important point, is there gender bias in engineering? I would love to say that there is no gender bias, but unfortunately, I think it's getting better and better. But the photograph that I show you is one of my favorite stories. I was in Japan. I was in Japan to help with to have a meeting with some designers about an offshore wind farm. Now, in Japan, if you look at the picture, you will see that I was just the only female standing up and explaining to them why they should do some certain site investigation. In this case, cone penetration testing. Cone penetration testing, CPT, is not traditionally done in Japan. And there was a full day meeting, and towards the whole day, they were not convinced. Everybody kept nodding their head. And because of the hierarchy, the most senior person in the room said no. So the whole room said no. So by about 5 o'clock, I said, okay, my trip is wasted. I just traveled from the UK. I cannot convince anyone. But suddenly, this one person, the most senior person, he nodded his head and said, oh, what she's saying makes a lot of sense. Let's do cone penetration testing. And you would not believe it, within the next 10 minutes, the entire room kind of just said, let's do cone penetration testing. So that gender bias is always because it was coming, whether because it was coming from a woman, I think it did not go until everybody in the room kind of agreed. And I have said similar things in the Middle East when I entered into the room and they asked me, oh, are you here for taking notes? We are waiting for a Dr. Ghosh. And I kind of said, I'm the Dr. Ghosh, but still, are you here to take notes? So unfortunately, it's getting better. I think the more women out there, the more we are visible, the more we make ourselves known, more we get awards, I think it makes it better for us. And obviously, I'm a great believer in networking and in networking with similar women. These type of groups that you have in DFI is priceless. This picture that we took, it was for Trinity College, where we had all the women who had graduated, because it's just 40 years since women were admitted to Trinity. So we had a gala show where people from the first batch to 40th batch all had gathered. And this network, the combination of reaching out to people, have really helped everyone in our career. I can count on these people to come and give me advice if I need it for some. And each of us need to what we call as our own bubbles. We need to have, like the COVID, against this COVID struggle, how you're reaching out to your bubbles. So we all need to make sure that we are reaching out to our own bubbles. Well, obviously, as we are growing up, I love this picture on the side because this is a picture in Bangladesh, Dhaka. I was a seismic engineer for a major project there. And for these girls, little girls there who have never seen women engineer, trying to see a women engineer clothed and standing there in sight, we were surrounded by schoolgirls. And one of the most interesting questions that they asked me was, can we become engineers? So we should not underestimate the power of role models in our lives. Role models have a very interesting and very powerful roles. And the more role models that we have, the more we are able to communicate and we are able to get better with our goals and objectives. So I think role model importance is very good. Sorry, I didn't read it. Next one. And the last message, which I think is very important for us, we have to be visible. So I have done a lot of media, lot of print, lot of trying to say what we are doing. And there's a documentary in the BBC which kind of talks about what engineers do, what women engineers are doing, talking about sustainability, talking about our role in society. And it makes us more visible, and it makes us really, people notice what you are doing. And very soon you will find out that people, this is how Lucky found me, because I was visible in social media. I was visible in LinkedIn. I was posting stuff in LinkedIn. So my key message to everyone here is really, first of all, take risks, be innovative, because some of the risks that we have in our careers, if we always think we want to do the same thing again and again, we cannot grow. So we have to diversify. If somebody asks me to do something what I haven't done before, I will definitely try and take a risk and see maybe there is a solution. So we should take risks, but by taking risk, I do not mean uncontrolled risk. Obviously, use your engineering judgment in taking the risks, because if we do things without taking this, then we will be in bigger problem. Look out for a mentor to guide you. A mentor is really important. Mentoring, having the right mentor will actually change your perception in life, and it will be really a big thing to have the correct mentor. A mentor's role of a mentor in your career progression cannot be, I cannot emphasize it enough. And last one from me is, do not be afraid to shout your laurels. Be visible. Let people know what you are doing. Do not sit in in the earlier days, it used to be you would do your work and people will notice you. Unfortunately, today, they only notice the one who shouts the loudest. I learned it through my own career that the one who shouts the loudest gets noticed. So we have to make sure that we cheer each other rather than bringing each other down. We have to pull each other up as a community. And my last slide, I just say, this is from one of my holidays in Mexico. I don't know how to swim, so I was really trying to jump from the top of a cliff, was really very, very fearful of that, but I think fear is what holds it. But the moment you let go of the fear, there's always new things, new avenues, and new experiences. So that's all I wanted to share. I think we would have a panel discussion now. So it's back to you, Lucky.
Thank you, Dr. Barnali. Now we know why a seismic engineer does not stand still. From my limited background on wind turbine foundations, I've always found offshore wind foundations fascinating. So it was really cool to see those pictures. And thank you for referring to the video of what engineers do. We will definitely check it out. Just to inform all the attendees, Women in Deep Foundations Committee last week debuted a video on geotechnical engineers. Dynamic engineers from the industry in United States came together and got the video completed. So if you have not checked out yet, I would encourage all the attendees to check it out. So now, as we were talking about panel discussion, the next part would be to introduce our panelists. Nicole Gwen, she is a chemical engineer at Bott Engineering out of Ann Arbor office. I've known Nicole for the last 8 years. We both started at Bott Engineering around the same time, and she was definitely my support system. I can say that. And she's from Clyde, Ohio, and graduated from the University of Toledo with a BS in chemical engineering in 2005. She has over 12 years of experience in chemical engineering, mostly in the power industry, and is a licensed professional engineer in multiple states, as well as a certified project management professional. At Bott, she takes on a consultant role as a lead process design engineer and project manager for projects from small feasibility studies to full-scale detailed design and construction. Nicole is also a coach and sponsor to support new hire integration and professional development of staff in the company. She had also led several service development initiatives and marketing campaigns to expand new services and clients in the arena of chemical engineering design. It's very difficult to find a female chemical engineer. I can definitely say that, just like other industries. So our next panelist is Casey Golden. It's great to have a women leader from a different industry. Thank you for joining us, Casey Ann. Although I think, finance and our industry definitely go hand in hand. Not to ignore that fact. So Casey Ann is a seasoned professional who has worked in the financial industry for nearly 20 years. She's currently a wealth advisor at Claris Group. Most recently, Casey was part of an elite 13% team at UBS, where she spent almost 17 years providing financial guidance and investment strategies for the firm's ultra wealthy, managing in excess of 500 million in investable assets. Prior to joining the team at UBS, Casey began her career in public accounting. She also has a passion for helping her clients to achieve both financial and life goals. Casey's philosophy on financial success is predicted on taking the time to listen to the specific needs of each client so that she can craft a detailed and tailored solution, as she does not believe one solution fits all. That is very true. Thank you, Nicole and Casey Ann again. So to start the panel discussion, I want to bring this question to Dr. Barnali first. I have seen on the LinkedIn profile of your LinkedIn profile that you do cross mentoring. So how do you think cross culture or border mentoring can help in the overall development of engineers?
So thank you for the question. I think the cross mentoring is a very interesting concept, because when you get a mentor from your own organization, then you are kind of restricted in your thinking, because everybody faces the same challenge. But the cross mentoring is like a lateral thinking. So you get a mentor. So the people who I am a cross mentor to, they are not from Motts. They're all from different organizations, but we all come together, and then I act as a mentor in certainly completely different industry, so not related to engineering. So it's a very good fertile ground for this kind of cross mentoring scheme. And I think from what I've heard, what the mentors have told me, they've all benefited from this cross mentoring scheme. And we also do what we call as reverse mentoring. So reverse mentoring is again a very senior person is linked with a very junior person, and there is a reverse flow of ideas as well. So the reverse mentoring scheme is also there.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Barnali. For the attendees, please send your questions through the question box. I will definitely ask the presenters and the presenter and the panelists as we go. I will hand over this to Dr. Barnali to continue the panel discussion.
Hi, thanks. I think I'm very lucky to be holding this session, and Nicole and Casey, both of them are very experienced, and probably they can bring in a different perspective. So probably I'll start by asking Nicole, at what point in your career did you feel confident about being a leader?
So I think that's pretty recent for myself. I obviously, when you get feedback from not only like your management team in your company, but also the people that are working with you or taking, that you're managing, when they provide feedback to me that I have really helped them, and or I am a leader within the company, that really helps. But I think, when that started to happen was when I really learned how to trust my gut, to trust the voice inside of my head and just do it without, a lot of times I've taken a lot of inaction, something in my head says that I should do it, but I just question myself and I don't. And when I stop doing that, that was definitely a part of it. And then I think also when I stopped thinking about myself and more about my company as a whole, or the people I'm managing, my team, when I really started to think about them and listen to my head, I think that's when it really happened for me.
That's great. Great to hear. I think that's the very same type of, when you get that feeling that you are kind of leadership is coming to you naturally. Maybe my next question to you, Casey, would be, how do you think in your career, how big has mentoring played the role in your career? And did you have male mentors or female mentors?
Mentoring has been huge for me, and I think back to 20 years ago, and while I did not recognize it as such, the first person on the team who took me under her wing as an intern said, this is how you should do these things to be able to guide me. And now looking back, she and I have a great relationship now, and since I've left the team, she's one of the people who are very, she's advocating for, clients working with me. But even more so in the last year, as I selected my own mentor, and you talked about almost cross mentoring. So while I'm a financial advisor, my my mentor is a CPA in Atlanta, and while the business is a little bit different, she's able to just provide me such amazing feedback of these are some of the things that you should be thinking about and how to think about it. So over the course of the years, I've had, my male boss, I view him as a huge mentor because I learned so much from him.
Yes, that's very good. Actually, it's a very interesting question, whether if you benefit more from a male mentor or a female mentor. It's a very interesting question. I think in my career, I would say I've always been mentored by male mentors, because, but that's just something because of if we are in engineering, it's quite difficult to find female mentors, especially maybe now we have more of them, so that makes a difference. Maybe, Nicole, I would like to just ask you, how do you think COVID-19 is going to affect the female workforce? Do you think it's going to have some adverse effect on the female workforce?
Yeah, I can just think about how I've been affected so far. I have kids, I have 3 boys, and with no school and not really having a easy access to childcare, someone in the home is going to have to take care of these kids. In my situation, the person that makes the most is probably going to be staying and working if they can, and the person that doesn't make as much is going to have to stay at home, and watch them. I could, just based on trends, I could see that affecting women more than men. That was the main thing that I could think of.
Casey, what's your opinion? Because in finance sector, I've heard many stories about how it's affecting women more adversely. What's your views on this?
Agreed. I've read lots of articles where normally in financial downturns, the jobs that women tend to hold aren't as impacted. But in this particular downturn that we've experienced during COVID-19, it's a lot of the women who have been impacted. And especially, as you said, Nicole, if you have a child at home and taking care of those kids, and let's be real, right? It's usually the women who end up having to take care of the kids for the most part. So I know that women are looking for jobs with either lots more flexibility, or trying to work a part-time schedule, or trying to do something that offers more flexibility so that they can either do both. And you're right, Nicole, if they're able to, if in a 2 people relationship, it's usually going to be the woman who is making less. Not always, let's be clear, not always, but it will usually be the woman, and she's going to end up being the one to stay home and take care of the kids.
So what we have done in the UK within our company, we have a sizable portion, almost 20-30% of the female representation. And one of the things which we did was obviously offer the chance to work flexibly. So as flexibly as possible, we moved around our deadlines. And despite all of this, we still had a lot of our female staff saying, especially those who had small children less than 5 years old, saying, can I go on unpaid leave because I cannot manage? So we have seen this, and there's not really much you can do apart from offering flexible working hours. Generally, would you say, Nicole, would you say that the COVID-19 has affected the business generally in your particular stream? Are you seeing effects of that?
So I work for a consulting firm. I'm in engineering and design. We do other other forms as well. But there's travel is definitely something that, we're not able to do as much. It's like travel only. And so that's definitely, I can see being a big effect. I think also the current projects that we were already on, we found that there's a lot that we can do from home, that I think that we didn't maybe see before. Teams, so many ways that you can stay connected, keep informed, and get that knowledge that you need to keep solving problems. I think that maybe in the future and future planning, what people end up, hiring for engineering for, to getting the job done could be different. It might not be that day-to-day like maintenance. Maybe things are, delayed a little more, and you're only working on the essential stuff. So we haven't seen as much of a change as I thought, though.
So basically get more creative. In the UK and Europe, different estimations are going on for what's going to happen to the economy. And depending on whose predictions you read, they're going to say that construction sector is going to see a 10% drop in productivity, which is obviously going to lead in the construction sector a 3% drop the salary. But I think these are all studies. There's also a bit that the government is investing. So basically one of the biggest projects, the High Speed 2, which kind of got its nod during this particular time. So the government is trying very hard to keep people in employment, and that's a good thing. Did you have some thoughts about this, Casey?
So I'm in the US, and I think it really depends on the industry. And I've heard just over the last few months, just small business, I network a lot in that circle, and businesses slow down substantially. People are starting to see pickups now with opportunities, but the last few months, things considerably slowed as everyone else was home and focused on everything else. In the longer term, I think this presents an opportunity for, depending on the segment that you're in, and also realizing that, this was a great time to reassess the way we've always done things, knowing that there are now better ways of doing them going forward.
Great. I think I would like to, Lucky, how are we doing for time?
I think we are okay. We still have 5 more minutes.
Okay, so I'll just ask the last question to wrap up and then try. Is there any question from the audience?
Yes, we do have 2 questions I was going to bring up. So one of the questions is for you, Dr. Barnali, based on your presentation. Is designing for seismic events economical for private homeowners?
It's a very controversial question. It is not, I guess, if you look at the cost of seismic design, if you want to do it, is about 1% of your house price, house price cost of the house. So although the upfront cost of 1% seems like people say, oh, I'm not going to do it. But if you lose it, the insurance, unfortunately, the insurance that you can buy in the market, they do not cover all the damages. So we've seen many cases where people say, oh, my house was insured against seismic, but it was insured against only a small bit. If the wall cracks, but not if the foundation goes away. If something happens to the ground, that's not covered under insurance, unless you are a very clever person who have looked through your insurance very carefully. So I would say yes, definitely worth trying to spend that little, because the things that need to be done are very simple things. One of the examples we had in Gujarat, after the earthquake, we kind of gave people, the local people, they said to us, don't give us money, give us knowledge. Tell us my house is going to be reconstructed. Show us what we can do so that next time it does not happen. That's what people told us. And we created a book in a local language where we kind of showed them how the beams and columns have to be connected together, what kind of detailing in very simple, non-engineering terms. Everybody got that. And the villagers got that. So when they were reconstructing, they followed those simple things. So I think that was a great lesson for us.
Awesome, that's awesome. So the next question is, any tips for networking during this pandemic? Casey, I want to start with you because I want to know, what is finance industry doing in terms of networking?
So thank you. I go to a lot of networking events, and we use Eventbrite. And I started networking before the pandemic. And the more you network, the more you'll meet people who will say you should attend this event. So on a weekly basis, I'm going to anywhere upwards of more than 10 events of where I'm able to either connect in a group setting or I'm having one-on-one conversations following up. And I think sometimes we miss the point of networking. I think we go to the networking events, but we don't follow up with the people afterwards that we really meet and enjoy. So it's so important to, if you're really connected with someone, ask them to have a virtual coffee, you know, especially now that you don't have to travel, that you're able to really connect with people and to get a deeper and more intimate knowledge of who they are. And don't focus on the business. I like to tell people, I want to get to know who you are first before we even get to the business aspect of it. And it just makes for such better conversations.
I really love those 2 points. You really hit it right on the head. Definitely, I think, we should take that extra time to network, with the people that we think, we have to learn from, or there is something that, that slight connection. It has been very difficult for me because I have been traveling 3 weeks in a month. That's how my schedule has been. And networking has been a big part of my life, and now coming up to where I can't travel, I can't go meet people, greet people, know about them, has been a very difficult thing. So I think I am going to take those 2 points from you. Definitely. Thank you, Casey.
Absolutely. I would encourage you to check out Eventbrite and do a search of events that are of interest to you. You'll find lots of things.
Definitely. Thank you. Dr. Barnali, what has Mott MacDonald been doing?
In what? In doing in what?
Networking to keep.
Networking, we've been having a lot of these teams, my calls, a lot of video calls. This has increased. I sometimes now spend almost my whole day sitting and talking in front of the video because, and one of the things about this has been we know our teams much better now. For example, Nicolette, who spoke earlier, she was in my same division, but before the lockdown, I never really knew that she had this skill. We just said a hi, hello in front of the coffee machine. That was all our interaction. Because of this, we now know it, and that's why I thought that her story needs to be told. So I think companies have been really encouraging people. We've been having lots of webinars and doing these kinds of events and a lot of networking.
Yeah, definitely. We do have time for one more question. The question that you wanted to ask Dr. Barnali before. You can go ahead and ask.
So I guess I wanted to just kind of try and summarize from you, Nicole, what has been the biggest challenge for you in your career?
Yeah, I thought about this, for me anyways, engineering has been really hard. I've tackled a lot of big problems. When I think about it, I loved solving those problems. Something that was a big challenge though that I didn't love is like when I got, just an example. Lately, I worked with a contractor for 6 months. And we were really making a good rapport. We were working together, because it was a hard project, and I felt like I really liked working with a contractor. And after, we had a meeting, I heard him say that they didn't think women had the stress that, was able to handle the stress in construction, and they shouldn't be out there. And I just felt like, defeated. Like I thought that we were in a different page, and that's the hardest part. I don't have an answer for that stuff, and I don't know how many nights and weekends to work, how many cool problems to solve together to like change that perspective.
A lot.
That's a very good example.
Yeah.
That's a good example we all face.
Casey, what's been your biggest challenge?
I think similar to Nicole, I'm in a male-dominated profession where women make up 23% of financial advisors. So it's, I'm also a minority woman. So when I looked at the statistics that there are 1.5% Black CFPs, right? So I don't represent, when I walk into a room, I don't represent what the regular financial advisor looks like. And Dr. Barnali, just like you, I went to an event, and I'd seen the person a couple of times before, and she asked me about the lighting or the room temperature setting for the room, and I'm like, what are you talking about? You know, and it's almost comical when you've worked as hard as you have to get to where you are, to still be asked because of the perception of, you know, whatever is in people's minds.
Like, do you make the tea or do you make coffee? Yes, of course. Yes, I think.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Barnali, Nicole, and Kasian. I think this was very good. Listening to, you know, 3 different perspectives of how you're all dealing with COVID, and also, like, you know, what your companies are doing to help you get past this working from home. And I'm sure once we get out of this, I think it will be very different for us. You know, getting back to new normal is going to be a little difficult, but at least, like, you know, we have some support system now. So thank you for sharing your stories also. I'm going to share one more slide at the end, what is coming up for the next webinar. And then I think we are good to go. So for the next webinar speaker, it's going to be on July 7th at the same time, 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. We're going to have Allegra Stennett, wealth manager. She will be sharing engineering your finances for success. I know we are all thinking about, right, like what is it going to be once we get out of this, and how are we going to manage our finances? So I think it's a great topic for us to learn what we can do to have a better, successful financial system. And we have a surprise. Before Allegra, we actually have a geotechnical engineer, Penny. She's a very good friend of mine, and she has an infectious smile. That's one of my favorites. And her partner, Rich, they will be performing for the attendees. So I'm looking forward to the next one already. Thank you so much, Dr. Barnali again, Nicole and Kasian. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful week.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.